Hi, I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I want to get away from topics per se and talk about you and me a little bit in this video. If you've been watching this podcast for a while, say a couple of the videos, you may have asked yourself, why does this guy think the way he thinks? It's good if you do. Becoming aware of what is going on around us starts with asking this type of question. But let's ask the right question. Not, why does he think the way he thinks? Ask the question, why do I think the way I think? See, this podcast is not for you to learn what and why I think the way I do on these topics. Certainly that is part of it, but not nearly all of it. More importantly is to give you the opportunity to learn more about what you think and why you think the way you do about these and other topics. Now, something to consider in the background. Anytime you ask a why or even a how question, are you asking for a teleological response or a mechanistic response? Now, this goes way back. As long as people have been thinking about philosophy, ideology, religion, theology, they've had to consider, when they ask the question why or how, what response they're looking for. Because they're pretty different. See, a teleological response is focused on the purpose of the event or action that's being questioned. On the other hand, a mechanistic response will be focused on the actual steps, the mechanics of the action or event. As far back as the Greeks, Plato was teleological, Aristotle more mechanistic. Keep that in mind. It's something you need to know about yourself. So, over the last several months, I have offered my thoughts on a number of topics that are fairly current for your consideration. Now, some of the topics have been a bit off the wall. A few, not the majority. In some areas, I may sound to you like a conservative, but in other areas, I may sound more like a progressive. Some discussions in these videos may have seemed overly simple, while others may have seemed overly complex. But let's talk about the tapestry behind my comments and your responses. And that tapestry is who we are and why we think the way we think. Why we answer the way we answer. You may recall, if not, now you will, that Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet of Polonius giving advice to his son Laertes, saying, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou cannot then be false to any man." Some think Shakespeare was being ironic, since Polonius was presented as a person of questionable integrity. But others, myself included, think Shakespeare may be hiding a more thoughtful comment on personal growth and authenticity in this statement by this unthoughtful character. Here are some things I know about myself. And I know that these things generally influence my opinions. Hence my comments in this podcast's videos. Foremost, I am a Christian modernist. But beyond this religious and political foundation, there are several other threads in my tapestry on which all my opinions and conclusions are woven. I am convinced that humanity has evolved to where we are over millions of years, since the creation of the universe. And perhaps through sequential species. The biological and social evolution of our species over a long, finite though indefinite period is an objective truth. And my belief regarding human evolution colors my comments on many, if not most, topics. I want to explain this a little further. How humanity has evolved and developed individually and socially over the past few hundreds of thousands of years is always at play. Our individual biology, our neurology, our emotions, our genetic hardwiring, all intimately tied to this entire timeline of our evolution. And the parallel social development that has taken place over the past hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of years. This hardwiring is in play in each of us for every action, reaction, emotion, and decision we make. We are still evolving at the same glacial pace we have always evolved, though the world around us is evolving at a different pace. Fortunately, we have our free will that responds both to the world around us and to our natural self, though they are potentially in conflict. And we need to acknowledge this part of ourselves. Individual, family, tribe, and species survival was and remains a dominant factor in our nature. Well, survival was not the only factor affecting our evolution and our existential success over these thousands of years. It was likely a dominant factor. So when we ask ourselves, what on the timeline of our evolution and development was the greatest benefit to our existential success, I think most would agree that we have to include our choice to live in community somewhere hundreds of thousands of years ago. After that, choices I would include are the explosion of cultural behaviors like tool use, art, religious rituals, about 50,000 years ago. Then the development and large-scale use of agriculture about 12,000 years ago. Then the Industrial Revolution about 200 years ago. And now the ongoing digital information revolution. Computers, the internet, and AI. All of these major benchmarks can be seen as species decisions or species choices. We took these paths because of our free will to choose what we concluded, with all the evidence we had available, was best. Now, you may see them as otherwise. They're not going to be undone. My understanding is that the first three, the decision to live in community, the decision to embrace arts, religion, cultural events, our decision to be agrarian, occurred at roughly the same time, pretty much worldwide, across all of the tribes and outposts that our species had migrated to. In any case, the impact on our global population from those choices was that we sustained the status quo. Our species did not disappear in the face of innumerable natural challenges until the agricultural revolution. The choice to become agrarian then dramatically increased our species population, which then exploded after first the Industrial Revolution, then the digital revolutions. This is a simplification, but it's a measurable simplification. Evolution and species choices were the precursors for where we are today. And I like to say they are major parts of the tapestry on which all current events, choices, and decisions are woven. See, for most of our evolutionary clock, we were racing to just keep our species alive. But for the past few thousand years, we have been steadily overpopulating the planet. And in the past 200 years, we have literally overwhelmed the planet. This is the figurative tapestry on which all current events are woven and on which all future events will ride as well. Finally, I want you who are watching these videos to understand that I believe the universe generally behaves non-linearly. I'm not a mathematician or a physicist or even a philosopher. So this is not a deep statement like Einstein's relativity. In fact, Sir Bertrand Russell and Alasdair MacIntyre, noted philosophers of the 20th into the 21st century, might even say it is really not a very philosophical statement, since I believe it to be avoiding an effort to find the single philosophical answer to all the problems of the universe. So, I'll explain myself by example. Take a walk in the woods. Walk for about an hour on a dirt path. As you walk, make a mental list of all the factors that need to be in place to sustain the flora and fauna of the bounded ecosystem of the woods around you. Think about those factors. And make a mental list of all the ways the factors on your list interact with each other. Then focus on one of the factors and make another mental list about all the factors outside of the small, bounded ecosystem of the woods around you that are needed to sustain the flora and fauna within your bounded ecosystem. Consider these questions then. Is your bounded ecosystem truly bounded? Is it easily predictable? Is it deterministic? Is it linear? And then finally, ask yourself the question, does your presence in the woods change the woods? And how about all those people, animals, machines outside the boundaries of the woods? Do they change the woods? See, my conclusion when I practice this simple exercise is that existence, even within a small bounded ecosystem, rapidly looks nonlinear, unpredictable, and non-intuitive. It leads me to distrust my intuition. Something I think is of value to having conversations about important topics. Here's what you know about me now, beyond my being a Christian modernist. I believe you and I are heavily influenced by our nature. We continue to reflect the evolution of our species over an indefinite and extended finite timeline. But that timeline also reflects that we as individuals, as families, tribes, and as a species have made free will choices that likewise heavily influence us today. And we have evolved and made these choices in a world, an imperfectly bounded ecosystem that appears nonlinear, unpredictable, and non-intuitive. The bottom line is that as we look at the problems of today, we need to fully understand the tapestry on which we are weaving our answers. I recently heard it perfectly summarized in a statement by Albert Einstein. Learn from yesterday. Live for today. Hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Until next time. Oh well.